So welcome to this bonus lesson where we're diving into one of the most overlooked parts of the mortgage process, which is conveyancing. Now I'm joined by Jonny Palmer, and he is the founder of Convi. He's a conveyancing solution company that partners with mortgage brokers to create an enjoyable home moving experience. Now, with over 10 years of experience working directly with solicitors, estate agents, and brokers, Jonny has built systems to put communication, speed, and client experience right at the center of the whole thing. Convi now helps brokers across the UK generate significant additional revenue through referral income while protecting their clients' moves and strengthening long-term relationships. Now, in this lesson, we're going to be unpacking simple frameworks that will show you how to protect your clients, speed up cases, and unlock a whole new revenue stream in your business. Let's do it. Okay, so Jonny, what do customers actually want from solicitors when it comes to picking a solicitor? What are they actually looking for?
So the very main thing, and if you've got this, then all else isn't as important, is the communication. You need to make sure that from the very start of the transaction to right through to completion, the solicitor is keeping you up to date, letting you know where you're at, and just making that whole process smooth for you. And I think on top of that, I'd even say the way that they communicate, because a lot of solicitors, they can use a lot of jargon. And, if you're buying a house for the first time, or even if you've, not moved in 20 years, you're not going to know a lot of what this jargon means. So just having the communication is really important. And the second part is getting through as quickly as possible. These are just some of the main things. You want to get through most of the time from start to completion as quickly as possible, because that can also reduce the amount of risk that happens throughout the move. So the quicker you can get there is as best as possible. And the last one is having fair value. And I don't mean cheap, because customers very rarely actually want cheap. There is some people out there that might just try and get the best fees as possible. And, I don't know what you teach, you might not actually want them customers, but, when you offer higher value and the customer can see that, that is exactly what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody to do the job, because when you buy a house, it's a massive investment, and you need to make sure that the solicitor looking after it has got the best value for you.
So you call that, and we've got different names, haven't we, for all these formulas. So you're calling this the CTF formula, yes? That's communication, time, and fair value.
Exactly, yeah. This is the CTF formula, and these are the three things that you need. I mean, like I said, everything outside of that is just a good to have. So, you can do all these things over email. It's always good to have systems that can automate some of this stuff. But as long as you've got these three things, everything else, it doesn't matter as much. But yeah, they are very important throughout the transaction.
No, it makes sense. And I do agree with you in regards to the fair value. It's people don't always want to go to the cheapest. In fact, don't think you should. And we all know with conveyancing how things can go wrong. I'm sure we're going to talk about maybe bits of that as in time goes on. But like, things can go wrong if you have the wrong people. And you get it. It is always cheaper to get it right first time in the than trying to save money on it, especially when it comes to house purchases. It's a strange one, but people shouldn't really cut corners on it.
No, it's like the one thing you don't want to cut corners on is, because people spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands, and then they're trying to negotiate on like £500. I know that at the time, you've got a lot of money that you're paying out towards when you're buying a house. But for the sake of that £500 difference, you can go from having probably one of the worst solicitors in the UK to having an actually quite a good solicitor. Yeah. And you and I, who have done thousands of transactions throughout our lifetime, we know how much that difference can make. But for somebody who's buying a house for the first time, or just thinks they can get a better rate, they sometimes look at that difference and think, you know what, I might go with the cheapest solicitor. But I would say it's up to the broker in that point to make sure that you are portraying how valuable it is to have the right solicitor in place, because having the wrong one can cost so much more than just that additional cost in fees, in both time and in money. So yeah, fair. That's why I wanted it. Fair value in that CTF formula. Fair value. I'm not saying cheap. Don't go cheap. But just offering the right value is going to be really important.
I love that. So that brings me to the second question, which is, why should brokers recommend solicitors? And you call this one the 3 Ps.
This is our 3 Ps. Yeah, this is our 3 Ps. So there are 3 main things when the reason that you're recommending a solicitor. The main one is to protect your client's move. And this is the main one. You want to make sure that no matter what happens, your client is looked after, their case is protected, and it goes back to that point of moving home is one of the most important things you can do in life. It's a lot of money that's going into it, and it's, again, your job as the broker to make sure that that is protected. And I don't mean just the actual transaction in itself. It's, when you've got a solicitor to do the legal work, you need to have reassurance that when your client moves into the house, that transaction is done properly. And then that moves us on to the second P, which is preventing poor service. I think moving home is maybe the third stressful thing that someone can do in life. It's very high up there. So you want to do what you can to prevent that poor service. And that means working with the right solicitors, making sure they have the right systems and processes in place to make sure that the customer moves home smoothly. And also when you recommend a customer, it's an extension of your trust. So, you could have spent years nurturing the customer, speaking to them, helping them prepare for the move. If you then recommend a bad solicitor who's going to offer poor service, that trust can go like that. So yeah, just making sure that you prevent that poor service is really important. And then the third one, which I'm a massive advocate on, is the profit. When you recommend a solicitor or recommend your client to a solicitor, there is a potential 20% uplift in your fees. So on average, we work with brokers who typically get around £350 referral fee. Now, if you're getting, I don't know, around £1,500 for the actual mortgage itself, that additional revenue is just profit on top. For the sake of having an extra conversation, talking to the client about your best recommendation, you're going to really boost your revenue per customer. That allows you to then reinvest into the company and improve things. And on top of that, and one thing that I advocate so strongly about is, let's just say you do get that 20% extra revenue per customer. Instead of having to go out and looking for more leads, more customers, just recommend 5 people to a solicitor. That accounts for 1 extra client. So you do less work, you get more money per customer, and you can look after your clients better. And getting money is always a bonus.
Well, in the mortgage business mastery system that I teach 1-to-1, and then the new broker success playbook, which is what we're in here now, they're both all about how do you make the most out of what you have. And I think that's always been the core of everything I teach, is how do you maximize that value whilst doing all the stuff you said. How do you protect the client? How do you protect yourself and your service and make more money? So all 3 of those make complete sense to me. I think recommending solicitors should be just as second nature as selling insurance, or it should just be part of it. I mean, I think wills are in there too, if you ask me. There's lots of things where we don't do that I think that you're spot on with that.
And I think you should also look at the flip side, and that's if you don't recommend a solicitor, then your client has there's a big liability there, because they could then go choose a solicitor who's, let's just say, a cheap solicitor who's notoriously bad. That's going to possibly jeopardize everything else involved. So, your fees, your client's move, everything else, just for the fact that you didn't speak or have something in place so that at least they have your recommended solicitors. But that profit bit is just the result of making sure you have the right things in place, and it is almost just the payoff for having the right systems in place.
Makes sense completely. That's the third question then. So how can brokers choose the right solicitors? You call this one one thing you learn about Jonny, guys, he's got all these different models, which I think are great. Anyone by now you should have completed the program. You'll know, like, I'm a big framework guy, but the rare model is what you called here. So this is how to choose the right solicitor. So let's unpack that one.
Yeah, there's actually a reason it's called the rare model, is because finding a solicitor who's consistently great is rare. Not impossible, but it is rare. So we'll sort of go through each one of these, and I have actually got my preferred one, which I'm sure you might know. So the first thing you can look at is reviews. This is almost just like the shop front of every business. Most solicitors now, they're working online. They might have a high street, but you're going to probably be recommending a solicitor who might not be in your area. So you can look at reviews. And I'd actually go a bit further and say not to look at certain review sites, because there's so many sites out there that people just absolutely bombarded with, like, bot views, so fake reviews.
What sites would you say are that?
I'd say reviews.io. I don't know if you've heard of that one. I'd even say Trustpilot. Trustpilot is quite open to some fake reviews, but I'd actually say Google is probably the best one to look at, because it's really hard to take
verified, don't you, to effectively to do it.
Yeah, but also with for example Trustpilot, if people put up reviews, the companies can contest it quite easily. So it works in favour of the company. Whereas with Google, if somebody puts in a bad review, like there is a very slim chance that you're going to be able to get the review down. So it gives a much better impression of what the actual service is. And even to go even further than that, if you're going to recommend a solicitor, I'd probably look to get anything above 4.7. Anything below that, it's not going to, it's not going to possibly be terrible, but that 4.7 mark I found is where you're looking at some of the better firms.
That makes sense. And then so what's the next part? Go on.
So that's the R. The A is the awards. Again, this is just a surefire way to show that this company or this individual has done a great job and they've been recognised for it. There's so many conveyancing or solicitor awards that you can go out there, find them very easy. And you can see you can see top firms in the south, in the north, you can see top individual firms. And this is going to give you a good idea of, what company and then what individual is going to be good to work with. And if you then find them, it's going to be a very simple conversation. It's just going to say, hey, I saw you won this award. I'm looking to refer my customers to a trusted solicitor. You guys came up and I'd like to see if you can set up a referral agreement. 9 times out of 10, they're going to be happy to, start a conversation and talk to you about that. And the R is actually my favourite, and there is a reason. Recommendations. That is just simply, if you have a broker network, like for example, you, Ash, a lot of brokers have other broker friends, and a lot of the time they talk about bad experiences, but they do also have positive experiences as well. So if you've got other brokers, it's going to be worth just sending them a message, talking to them, speaking in networks, in groups. I'm sure that Ash has a group of brokers that you can talk to, and they'll have some recommendations. But this just means that they've actually worked with the solicitor, they've had the actual experience, they've gone through it, and they know exactly what that solicitor's like to communicate their systems and processes. So they've actually gone through the work, they've been in the trenches. So if they've had a great experience with one, then they can recommend it. And that's my favorite one. And the last is experience. And that is just simply from, very similar people that you've worked with before, the experience that you've had over the years, what solicitors have consistently come up that I like to work with. And again, on the flip side, what ones have consistently been bad, what ones I want to stay away from. And this is where you can also advise your clients. This is not a solicitor that I think that you should be working with. But yeah, if it was me, I'd definitely lean on the recommendations the most, because I feel like there's much more integrity in that. There's room for some manipulation with reviews and awards, whereas recommendations come straight from people who have no reason to lie to you. So that's going to be my best recommendation.
In fact, I guess you say recommendations, they also have their own reputation on the line when they do that. I always find recommendations are a hard one. In fact, even for example, this literally what we're doing right now, we're recording this for the playbook. I could not tell you how many people have reached out to me who I know nothing about, who have been lurking on my socials for years, who now there's some way of trying to potentially get access to all of you guys who are watching this and bought the program and going through it. It's funny how, and every one of them, like, the reason you're on here, because you're a client, you're a friend, I respect you, I know you do a good job. It's the amount of people who reach out and they're like, oh, can I get in there? Like, no, because I'm not going to recommend anybody who I think at all. And one person reached out to me recently who was like, can I recommend you? And they're a network who a few of my clients are part of, and they're awful. And I was like, no. So that I think there's an element of that recommendation of your word and who you put in front of people really matters. So I think you said it's probably the number one for that.
100%. And again, it goes back to, there's a lot of brokers who have been in the industry for like 20 years. And some of them just don't refer through to solicitors at all. But some of them have been, they've worked through, they've really been through it. So they know what firms are good, what firms are bad. And again, it's just leaning on that reputation. And like you say, you don't want to associate with a company who doesn't do a good job, because then that kind of looks bad on you. So yeah, that's the one that I'd probably, if you're going to go for any, definitely go for that one.
Love it. Which brings us on to the next question, number 4, which is how do you maximize conveyancing referrals? So how do you make the most out of this? And you call this, what is the system you call this? The ACE.
Ace every client. And again, it goes that I think the really key part is every client. A lot of brokers, when they start working with us, they don't have anything in place. They haven't got systems, haven't got processes, they haven't got anything. They might just recommend a solicitor when the client says, oh, by the way, I've heard that I need to get a solicitor involved. Can you help me? And that's when they'll do it. But if you only do it when you do that, you're just not going to get results. And I'd almost say there's no point doing it, because you're then going to get more ag from doing that, and it's not going to be worth your while. So acing every client is the most important part, is making sure that you have everything in place for every single client that you speak to. So the ACE every client is ask early. So when you're speaking to your customers, like I said earlier, you're going to be nurturing them for a long time before they get like an agreement in principle or for when they're ready to go. So you need to have that conversation with them as early as possible. It benefits them because a lot of the time they don't want to go around searching for solicitors. They don't want to have to go ask everyone. They don't want to have to go online and, you know, search and do all the quotes. As the trusted advisor, they want to be led. They want to be guided as to, you know, what they want to do. So I go back to first-time buyers. A lot of them don't even know that they need a solicitor when they're buying a house. So if you can come and say, oh, by the way, you need a solicitor, here's my recommendation, and you have that conversation as early as possible, that then stops them from having to look elsewhere. So, you know, when they find a house to buy, their estate agent's going to recommend them one. They could have one from friends and families. So, but the earlier you have the conversation, the more they block that off, because they'll just say, oh no, my broker recommended one, I'm good to go. Even to add on to that, the clients then strengthen their offers when they are putting an offer forward on a property, because if you have that conversation with them, they can speak to the agent, they can speak to the seller, and they say, we've got legals ready, we're good to go. And if you're then competing with somebody else to buy that house, you might actually win that offer because you've got your solicitors ready to go. So having that conversation as early as possible is very important. The second part is to create systems in the ACE framework. So creating the systems so that you've rarely got to think about actually making a referral. It just happens. So I'm sure that you talk a lot about systems and processes in everything else you do. All we need to do here is make sure that when you hit a certain milestone or have a certain conversation, you're sending them out a conveyancing quote. And getting a quote out to a customer is super simple. You know, you can either speak to a solicitor before, or you can have the sort of system that we use where you key in some basic information and it actually kicks out quotes for you. You can then send this through to them to give them a full breakdown in all the fees involved, so that, again, they've got everything that they need and they haven't got to worry about it. And every single time they've got that all already in place. And the last part is the expanding the options. And this is what a lot of brokers don't do. And some of our most successful brokers do it. And the reason that it's called expanding the options is giving them a few options that they can then choose from. So as a broker, if you give your client one quote or one recommendation, they might then go say, oh, I've got one recommendation, I might go get another one just to compare the two. However, if you expand the options of the solicitors that you recommend to say 3, then they're going to look at them 3 that you've offered, and then you've almost created the market for them to choose from. Now, more often than not, they might just go for the most competitive one because they're your recommended, and they might find the most competitive one out of that. But giving them the option, again, just makes the decision to go look elsewhere less necessary. So I think it's the statistics are it's best to give 5 options. I think that then gives like a true market value. But yeah, just giving them a few options of who to go through with, they'll then much likely go ahead with one of the ones that you recommended.
That makes sense. The idea of the systems as well, just to kind of add on to that, that's the UK. It was Scotland originally, but the UK, the organ donor concept. I don't know if you know about this or not. No. So that the organ donor concept was that traditionally in the UK, we opted in for organ donation, and in Scotland and now in the UK, they did an opt out. So you had to opt out instead of opt in, and the uptake was insanely high compared to because people just usually act in line with what everyone else does, and so when they had to when it was an opt in, very few people actually donated organs. When they opted out, very few people actually opted out and did donate. And the reason why I say that, it's exactly the same what you talk about here is creating systems. If you create a system in your business where, as a broker, where it is an opt out of my recommendation, not an opt into my recommendation. So this is what we do, how we do it, this is where it is, ready to go. And it's an assumptive close. As you said, it then creates a system of like, oh, I don't really want to do that. And that's where you'll get a lot more people who'll say yes. As you said, if it just becomes like autopilot.
Yeah, and I think as a broker, actually, it shows that you're more valuable because, we work with a lot of brokers who work with high net worth clients, and they don't want to deal with anything. They just want like the broker to go, you go deal with it. And, if we can kind of take that concept and work it with everybody else. Like you look after your client. This is your client. If you go to another solicitor, you go to any other additional services, there is also a chance that you might then lose them to anything else. So if you just say, look, I've got this all under control, I think it adds more value to you as a broker as well.
Completely agree. So that brings on to the next one, number 5. We're smashing through these, and these are great. And I'm sure everyone watching this will get loads of value. So the next one we've got here is, how can brokers speed up the conveyancing cases? I'd be interested to know this one myself because I'm currently buying a house. Yeah. Break it down for me. How do we do that?
Yeah. So this is through our fast track method.
Okay.
I've personally dealt with thousands and thousands of transactions. And the thing that I've come to realize is we want to try and take as much work out of the solicitor's hands as possible, and also make their life as easy as possible, because solicitors are very good at what they do. They've gone through years and years of training and experience to do law. And sometimes everything outside of that they find quite difficult. So the first thing that we want to do is get everything set up and moving as quickly as possible. So this is the first steps fast. What I mean by that is when one of your clients goes ahead with your recommended solicitor, you need to get them to fill out the documentation as fast as possible. Speak to the estate agent to give them the solicitor's details, or make sure they have them as soon as possible so they can send out the sales memorandum. Because if they haven't sent that out, then nothing else is going to happen anyway. So speak to them, make sure they've got the sales memorandum out. And then the last thing that saves a lot of time is getting the property searches ordered as soon as possible as well. I would say that you can actually order searches on the day of instruction. That's what we do. It just means that we get the searches back quicker. There's no need to delay it or wait for them to come back, and then we can report on them and move through to a quicker exchange or completion. But having this first bit done can save even a couple of weeks. There's a lot of firms out there, a lot of solicitors out there who might even take a couple of days to send out their terms of business, and then another couple of days to send out the TA forms on the sale or any additional documents. And then if your clients are then spending, I don't know, let's just say it's a Wednesday, and the clients say, oh yeah, I'll wait till this weekend to fill it out. That week or two that's delayed, you don't feel it until you get through to the other side at completion, and then you might be stressing because you want to get that couple of weeks in, and you could have saved that by doing it quicker at the start, if that makes sense. And on top of that as well, if you get things done quickly at the start, it then creates this motion that we're going for a quick transaction. We want to make sure things go through smoothly. We're set up and ready to go, and then we're just waiting for the draft contract to come from the seller's solicitor. So yeah, getting that bit done early as quickly as possible really, really helps. The second part is connecting with the agent. So we obviously mentioned about getting the sales memorandum out quicker, but it's also getting them on side and making sure that you can really use them as a positive entity within the transaction. They are paid quite a lot of money to help with the transaction, so they can chase things up. You can really lean on them, and you can give them completion dates from the start so that they can talk to the rest of the chain to say, we're looking to aim for this date for completion. And the reason that we do that from the start, not to say like this is the exact date, if it doesn't reach this, then the deal's off, but just to say this is what we want to work towards. Because if your clients are looking to work towards, I don't know, like an 8-week completion, but the sellers or people further up in the chain are looking for, say, 12 to 16 weeks or something completely different, then you're just going to completely be unaligned. So making sure we get that completion date agreed from the start with the agent is really important, because they can then communicate that throughout the rest of the chain. So that's agent connected. The S in the fast track is having the solicitor on panel. And this is quite simply, one, making sure you've got the solicitor who is sort of prepared and ready to go. But two, one of the big mistakes I see a lot of the time is clients will instruct solicitors who aren't on the panel of the lender that you're going to be using for the purchase. And then you can get a month. I've even seen it get to like ready to exchange, and then the solicitor said, "Oh yeah, by the way, we've just realised that you're using a lender we're not on panel for. We can't exchange or complete this for you." So, making sure that lender is on panel from the very start is very important to making sure it goes through as quickly as possible. And the last one, which is the almost the bulk of the conveyancing transaction, is tracking and talking to the solicitor. Outside of the fact that this just keeps everybody up to date, it also means that the solicitors have a very good idea of where the move is every step of the way. So, if you at Convi, we speak to each solicitor every single week to get an update on every single client every single week. not only is this to update people and keep people informed of where the move is, but it also just jogs their memories like, oh yeah, this happened last week, I can go do that. And if nothing's been done for a week, they then, it pushes them to go do more. So making sure you're speaking to your solicitor, I'd say weekly, just to sort of keep the motion, keep pushing things through, because things can just get dropped. You can get put to the bottom of the list, and then nothing gets moved until you then do the chase through. And this is what happens with solicitors. You then chase them up, and then they go do work. Whereas what you want to try and do is eradicate that, making sure you're just having consistent conversations with them, so that it's very smooth throughout the transaction. And that's the fast model. What I'd say is as well, the national average, I think at the moment, is around 20 weeks to completion.
Wow. I was going to ask that question, is how long is the kind of average at the moment?
Yeah, 20 weeks at the moment. I think it's actually coming down a bit. It was very high since after COVID. It's coming down a bit. But, these things, weeks really matter. Weeks really matter when you're moving home. So when you start to implement all of these things, you just have this forward motion. And, our average completion at the moment, I think 16.5 weeks. So just these very simple 16.5 weeks. Yeah. It's these very simple things really get things in place. Also, all underpinned by just having the right solicitor. You could have a bad solicitor who doesn't keep you updated, who doesn't do progress, and all of this is going to fall apart if you don't have that.
No, it's all stuff that, like, people who are watching this, this program is designed for people who are new to the kind of space, but could be as well people who are maybe employed, Connells, people like that, who have been in the space but not in the self-employed role. But it's an interesting one for what you're talking about, which is this idea of knowing how long these things actually take, because this is linked to when you get paid. I think that's the bit that people don't get. Is like, when you're, as a broker, like, and we talk about this, it's actually in the final module 5, we're talking about how, your cash flow is a very big problem in the first year as a self-employed advisor, because you get paid a month after completion. If you're taking 20 weeks, some of these cases, it could be 6 months from when you actually are, from when you actually do that mortgage to when you actually get paid. It's crazy. Yeah. So it's important to be on these and pushing these. And like you said, just being on the tail for all of your clients to get paid. Like, that's just the biggest one, just to actually get paid, not by them, but the lender. Yeah. Like, you normally being paid, but like, we're actually getting insurances, and you can't get paid until they're in. So it's one of those things that it's important.
Exactly. And I think so many people do like the front end stuff, like you probably teach about, they get all this stuff done to acquire the customer. But if you haven't got all of this in place, then I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but it's something that I think people should focus on a lot more. Like I said, a lot of our most successful clients, they're doing all of this, obviously through Convi, getting things set up, and they're just getting paid quicker. So like you say, their cash flow is coming through, they're able to reinvest it and also just spend less time dealing with, like nuisance cases. Looking after that is makes a huge difference.
So that brings on to number 6, which is, what is the financial upside of conveyancing referrals? What do they get? What's the point?
Yeah. I like to go through a bit of an example case when I get asked this, because again, we've worked with brokers in the past, reasonable sized firms who they don't even want to refer cases to solicitors. So, we've talked about conveyancing, we've talked about how to get the right systems and processes in place. So you've got the trust. As a broker, you want to be able to trust your recommendation, because you'd never recommend a bad solicitor just to get paid some cash. The looking after the customer, the service is always at the forefront. The profit and the money and everything is always, that comes on the back of it. But if we look at this from a bit more of a practical view, what would you say, like, the average number of instructions or mortgages a self-employed or broker starting out would be doing?
Oh gosh, starting out, I'd say you'd be happy if you're doing one a week, but I'd say ideally you want to be going from for a month to at the beginning, when if you're sort of like fresh off you're completely fresh out of the exams, you're not done anything. Like one a week is probably a solid start. I think if you're being a good advisor, you're going to get further on, you're probably like 10 a month.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, let's start fresh. Or,
that's what most of the people hear. So let's do one a week.
Yeah. And I think the reason I want to start here is because I want to show how important the conveyancing side can be and what it can mean for their businesses. So let's just start on one a week. You're doing one mortgage a week, and on average, you're not going to win every single customer to their conveyancing referrals. As much as you'd want to, they might have a family member who has the trusted solicitor, and they go ahead with them. So we do operate at about 75%. Instruction to quote. So let's just say out of 4 mortgages that you do every month, 3 of them sign up to your recommended solicitor. And let's say, again, on average, we get about 352, or the brokers get about £352 commission per case. So if we look at that on a monthly basis, you're getting 3 deals, £350 per case. That's £1,050 extra in conveyancing revenue. So again, not like a massive change, but if you're starting out, that can really make the difference. If you're employed, that could be the difference between making that step to going self-employed or, taking that leap. If you are self-employed and ready, it can make the difference between paying yourself an actual livable wage, stopping that part-time job, whatever it may be. That extra £1,000 can make a really, really big difference. Times that by the course of the year, you've got £12,600. And, even if you're just starting out, that can be used to hire an extra admin to then focus on, more of the getting the leads and everything like that. It can be just put back into the bank. There's so much that can happen just from having a good conversation, having it in your systems and processes to making that extra bit of revenue. Because every single case that you do, like I said, there's a potential 20% extra that you can earn just from recommending the solicitor. And in my eyes, it's the easiest win that you can get on top of the mortgage. Protection, I think there's more work to go through than there is with a conveyancing referral.
A lot more. Yeah. So the protection is one of those ones people listen to this, they would have gone. The protection is the big payout of all of the whole. Yeah. It's the money of the whole thing. You make the most money. Ideally, you're most probably making 70 to 80% of your entire commission will come from protection. But it's the hardest one to do, and it's a lot of work. It's not easy. Legals, like conveyancing, it is very simple money. I mean, it's probably one of the easiest. It's up there with home insurance at the level of ease of what you can do. And yet, as you said, you need it. You can't buy a house without it, and no one knows. Very few people will know a conveyancer. And as you just said, and I want to let you go back onto it, but just to point out for the people who listen to this, and just to add to this, is like, because you're a client of mine within the kind of upper level of what we do. So we'll be like, oh, £1,000. But like, to the people who are on this program and who this is made for, £1,000 is right at the beginning of that thing. As you said, that is real money. Like that is like the many people who are doing this program, me being one of those people when I first started doing this, and you would have been there too, Jonny, yourself, is like, the goal is just, can I make the same amount of money that I made when I was employed? So can I make 35, 40 grand a year? And if you can find, actually from each case, I'm only getting 1, 2, 3 mortgages a month, but I can make them worth 3 grand, 4 grand, then that's a no brainer. So it's such a huge thing to bake in from the beginning. Like, I just want to double down on that for a second, just from my perspective, for people watching and for you, just to say it's so important, I think, at the beginning, because you will not survive as a broker on the mortgage alone. You will not until you're hitting those 10. Even 10 is not enough. 10 won't get you a lot of money if you're not doing anything else.
Yeah. And, there's obviously levels to this. We have brokers that are doing 20, 30, 50 mortgages a month. And, that is that's a whole nother level. And again, the best thing to do is get it into your systems. It's like investing. Like, even if you haven't got that much money to invest, you should still invest just to get in the flow of investing. It's the same with conveyancing referrals. When you start, get it into your systems and processes so that when you do scale up and you're doing these bigger numbers, this becomes such a key part of the revenue. We've got people who are, getting tens of thousands from their conveyancing referrals, and they're using this just to like reinvest it back into the business for the sake of having a conversation. People are, they're employing admins solely on the conveyancing referrals that they're making. And the way that we work, we also pay some of that commission up front. So you talk about cash flow. It's just making sure you know the best things in order to boost the revenue, make life easier, but also transition into, actually growing the business a bit better as well. So super important that we do it every time. That's just a bit of a snippet as to, what you can get from it. But there's also some non-tangible benefits that you can get from the referrals. And one of them that I talk about a lot is trust. I've been in a lot of the different areas within the property transaction. So on the solicitor side, the estate agency side, and now I work predominantly with mortgage brokers. And what I found is that clients trust the mortgage broker the most out of everybody. So when you then go on to recommend a solicitor who, again, is a trustworthy recommendation, they're then much more bought into you as a person or an individual. So they're less likely to go find somebody else to work with in the future. They'll come back to you because you made that a good recommendation. But it also means that if you then make another recommendation for something else, like a survey or home insurance, whatever it is, it's almost a no-brainer because there's almost like a positive loop. If you recommend a solicitor or any other service and it comes back to be a good experience, if you then recommend something else, they're just going to be much more likely to do it because the last time they did it, it worked out. So yeah, they've already bought that trust. This doubles down on the trust. It gives you more ability to cross-sell into other areas, and it builds into that ecosystem that you have as well. So yeah, I think that there's obviously, you've got the financial side, which is huge. There's also some non-tangibles that you can see in there. And one step further than that, which we started to see, is when you recommend a great solicitor, friends and family, they'll recommend it. So, you can then have reciprocal commission, which we don't, it's not like a massive amount, but if you get a friend and family who recommends you to one or two extra, even a year, it's extra income that you wouldn't have got. So, there is a lot to be made out of it.
I love it. And so one of the questions you've got down here is, and you put this because most of these questions we've asked you to prepare because it's for the students of the program, is when do brokers need a specialist solicitor? So that kind of, it's a whole different thing. This is a whole interesting kind of ball game. So just unpack that for us, just so people understand what that may be, because there are some people who come in and go, I'm going to do this other specialist kind of lending.
Yeah, sure. It's a big market, and I think more brokers are moving into this now. So you see like commercial purchases, even stuff like auction purchases or bridging, all of these types of transactions that aren't your typical, purchase of a residential house. The reason I wanted to touch on it was because not every solicitor can do every transaction. So you might have a good relationship with a solicitor who's very good at doing residential sales and purchase. If you have any more specialist cases that come on, you think, oh yeah, they're a great solicitor, I can ask them to do it. A lot of solicitors will still take on the work, but they don't know how. It's not that they don't know how to do it. It's just that they're not specialised in it, so they're not the ones that you should be going to. So the reason that I wanted to bring it up is because a lot of people get caught out by this, and a lot of people find it hard to find a good solicitor for bridging, for commercial, for auction purchases. Which there's much more pressure. With an auction purchase, for example, in the traditional method, you've got normally 28 days, or a new build, you've got 28 days to have that transaction done. And if that goes wrong, it can go very wrong for everyone involved. There's deposits at risk, there's fees at risk. There's a lot of things that can happen that you're going to have to try and avoid. As the broker, they trust you to recommend the right solicitor. So yeah, if you ever have any sort of transactions outside of the normal residential sale or purchase, I'd always just do a bit more due diligence just to make sure that solicitor that you work with has previously done transactions before and they've gone successfully, so that they don't get caught out in the future.
And so final question we have here, which is finally time for you to talk about what you do. So how does Convi make conveyancing easier for people? So people considering potentially working with you, brokers here thinking I might want to reach out to you and work with you. How does Convi make conveyancing easier for people? How do you work?
So everything that I've spoken about today, again, has just been from my years or 10 years of doing this thing specifically. It's a very niche thing. So I've got a lot of experience, and our team have a lot of experience in making sure that things just go smoothly, and that the broker gets as much out of it as possible. So this is almost just like the basics of what to do, and it can sometimes feel like a lot, especially as a new broker that's coming into it. So where we come in, we're almost just like a plug-in. So you can be a self-employed broker starting out from the very first time, and you can be plugged into what I would consider one of the best options out there for a broker to use to help their customers move home. So brokers that use Convi, they have a system where they can log in, they can put the customer's very basic details in, get conveyancing quotes from solicitors that I've worked with over 10 years that I know, like, and trust. And then when the client instructs that solicitor, the part that we do at Convi is we call the client, we run through everything that they need to know. So we run through the transaction, we run through the quotation, we run through what to expect. And this initial conversation is really important to making sure that it goes through as smoothly as possible. We then order the property searches, we set the legal file up with the solicitor, we call the estate agent on behalf of the solicitor to give them the details, and then we to get them set up in that fast model, and then we track and progress the case from start to finish. Not to say that we do the actual legal work, but we are there every single week getting an update on every single client and updating them via WhatsApp, phone call, email, and updating the brokers as well with their move. And these are things that we've just learned from experience what brokers want. So, they can plug into it. We've got the service there, but we've also got the financials as well. So we work with our brokers on, how to pitch it properly, when to pitch it, the things to say when you're actually talking to a customer. And it's, really simple stuff, a lot of it that we've gone through today. But it's just to maximize the conveyance referrals as much as possible so you can use it as a staple in your business. Two extra things that we have. One is our commission that we pay up front. So like I mentioned, we pay a commission up front out of your total commission. It's normally £100. And then you can adjust your back end commission to whatever you like. So you have the upfront cash flow. And we also have protection for your clients as well. So 1 in 3 transactions fall through typically. So we have protection whereby if your client's purchase falls through or their sale falls through, they don't get charged for the legal fees with the solicitors. We set them back up on their next transaction completely free of charge, order them a new search pack for free, and make sure that they're not at a financial loss because of it. So we would just want to make sure that you're maximizing your referrals, your customers are getting the best service, and we are a very simple plug-in. We can get you up and running in about 5 hours of having an initial conversation.
That wraps up this bonus lesson on conveyancing with Jonny Palmer from Convi. Now, if you'd like to learn more about Jonny and how Convi can help you work with some of the best legal firms in the UK, check out the link in the description of this lesson.